Hey everybody. So yesterday, in class, you guys should have looked at Europe in crisis, continuing on with that theme of really how Europe was in an upheaval politically and religiously speaking. In class this week, we looked at Spain, and then yesterday, you guys should have focused in on England. Now, the major thing that we're going to continue on today, and you can see on our screen, we're going to continue looking at Europe in crisis with England. Specifically, though, we're going to look at, if my computer will move, we're going to look at new government philosophies that are going to arise. Okay, so after those major upheavals that are taking place in Europe, we're going to have two new major political philosophers come onto the scene. Okay, and their names are Thomas Hobbes and John Locke. And you can see them here on the screen. Thomas Hobbes, he's on the left, and John Locke is on the right. Now, these two men, their political philosophies will really come to influence, the American governmental system as we know it, even today. Okay? And they're very different in terms of their outlook on not only the role of government, but also just how humanity itself, what are we destined for, in terms of how do we act. So pretty big philosophy stuff, not to take lightly, but I hope that you enjoy learning about these two men. So Thomas Hobbes, we're going to talk about him first. He argues, after all these upheavals in England, he's going to argue that naturally people are bad. Okay, he believes that people in their core are naturally cruel, greedy, and selfish. Okay, and he believed that, if people were not controlled, they would fight, rob one another, oppress one another, and he believed that life in the state of nature, which is just, life without any laws. So he believed that life without any laws would be poor, nasty, and short. Basically, constant warfare. Okay, and that makes sense, right? If you believe that in their core people are bad, it makes sense then that you would think that life without any government system would be horrific. Okay? Because, what's going to stop me from coming to your house, hitting you on the head with a hammer, and stealing, your food? Okay? So, to escape this, horrific life, okay, Thomas Hobbes believed that people needed to enter what we call a social contract. Now think about it. Any contract is very simple at its core. A good definition of contract is simply, hey, I give you something in return for something. Okay, so the social contract that Thomas Hobbes is talking about is simply an agreement between citizens and the government. Okay, now his agreement is that citizens are going to give up their freedoms in order for an organized, quote-unquote, peaceful society. And the best way to enter into this social contract, to escape the state of nature, to escape that constant state of warfare, and to have organized society, Thomas Hobbes believed that we needed an absolute monarchy. And the reason why he thought that we needed an absolute monarchy is specifically because he thought that if the government had absolute authority to make all decisions, they would best be suited to impose order. Okay. Now, if we think back, we've kind of already talked about this with Chinese political thought. Remember, with legalism and Confucianism and Taoism, of those three, Thomas Hobbes would probably most align with legalism. The government has to be harsh, maybe even at times be cruel, because people, at their core, are cruel. The only way to, maintain order is to have widespread control. Alright, so that's Thomas Hobbes. Let's look now at our second major philosopher, John Locke. And he's going to be kind of the counterpart to Thomas Hobbes. Alright, so Locke is really going to have a more optimistic viewpoint on human nature, that state of nature. He thought, within the state of nature, people are going to be more reasonable and moral. The state of nature, it's not going to be constant warfare. Yes, you're going to have, your few bad apples. But John Locke viewed, for the most part, I am born with morals. I'm a reasonable person, I know it's wrong to come into your house, hit you on the head with a hammer, and steal all your food. Right? Morally speaking, I just know that that is wrong. Okay? Now, to further this, Locke argued that people also were born with natural rights that belong to them from birth. Okay, those rights were given from, God, your creator, whatever you want to call it. And those natural rights that every single person are born with is life, liberty, and property. Now, that might sound a little familiar to you with the Declaration of Independence, with life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And it should sound familiar. Okay. So Locke is going to argue that people are going to form government to protect those natural rights that we just discussed. Okay. And the best kind of government had limited power. And then on top of that was also accepted by all citizens. Because think about it. Locke was very concerned about the government infringing on your natural rights. Okay, that life, liberty, and property. And so Locke believed, if we have an all-powerful government, that all-powerful government is probably going to start trying to take away your natural rights, and we can't have that. Okay, because without government, he was like, for the most part, people are going to be reasonable and moral. And the only reason why we have government is to protect your natural rights. So, a government, he said, is going to have an obligation to the people that it governed. And, if your government started violating your natural rights given to you by your creator, the people then not only had a right to overthrow that government, he believed, but also an obligation. Okay? And this is a pretty radical idea in this time period in history, because in this age, absolute monarchies really ruled the scene. And so this idea that, people are born with natural rights and all of this stuff, it had been unheard of. Okay, it's, for the most part, I would argue, widely accepted doctrine today. But again, in this time period, very, very radical. Right? So his ideas are one day going to influence the leaders of the American Revolution, specifically Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, and James Madison. And again, when we talk about ancient Chinese political doctrine with legalism, Confucianism, and Taoism, I would argue that John Locke is more like Confucianism, if we were going to draw correlations between those three. Okay. All right, guys. Very short notes. We're coming in at just over 8 minutes long. So what you're going to do next, you guys just have a very short reading that has to do with these two gentlemen here and how they would again influence future revolutions in the world, including the American Revolution. If you are in class and if you finish early, if you did not finish the assignment from yesterday, we need to make sure that we get that done and turned in. And so you could use that extra time that you have in class to finish that. Okay. Or if you didn't get the Unit 5 Part 1 vocab finish, you could do that as well. All right, guys. If you have questions, you can send me an email. Remember, it will probably take me longer than usual to get back to you because of current situation. But I hope that you guys have a good rest of your day, and I will see you on Monday.